The Adventures of Mark Twain, as told by himself. Performed by Shannon. Introduction. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The lecture will be delivered this evening by Mark Twain, a gentleman whose high moral character and unimpeachable integrity are only surpassed by his natural modesty and sweetness of disposition. I refer in these general terms to myself, for I am the party. I was obliged to excuse the chairman from introducing me because he never compliments anybody, and I knew I could do it just as well without forgetting any of the particulars. Besides, you never know what a person is going to say when they introduce you. For example, 30 years ago, when I was just starting out on the lecture circuit, that is, in 1866, I was in the mining camp of Red Dog up around Placerville in Grass Valley. There I was introduced by an old miner who was pressed into service to introduce me. He tried to get away, but they caught him and pushed him up on the stage. All he said about me was this: I only know two things about this man, and one is that he's never been in the penitentiary, and the other is, I can't imagine why not. And so now I play it safe and introduce myself. I had intended to tell you only the truth tonight, but I may have already misled you. I must now confess to you that Mark Twain is not my real name. My parents, John and Jane Clemens, gave me the name Samuel. I didn't become Mark Twain, as it were, until 1863. I was born in 1835 in Florida, Missouri, that is, on the Salt River. I don't remember much about that almost invisible village, though, because we moved away from there when I was just 3 years old, about 40 miles to the northeast of Hannibal on the Mississippi River. Hannibal was a new town when we moved there and growing. In fact, when I got a little older, it became the second largest place in Missouri, the only larger one being St. Louis, some 130 miles downriver, with about 10,000 inhabitants at the time. St. Louis was not only the largest city in Missouri, but the largest city west of the Mississippi. Back in Florida, I had been born prematurely. I was frail and sickly as a baby. When a neighbor lady came visiting soon after I was born, she looked at me in my crib, then turned to my mother and said, "You don't expect to raise that babe, do you?" My mother allowed she would try. Not long ago, I asked my mother, "I suppose that during all that time you were uneasy about me." "Yes, the whole time," she admitted. "Afraid I wouldn't live?" She seemed to consider for a while, then said, "No. Afraid you would." It may seem that I did my best to not survive my childhood. I almost drowned 9 times while we lived in Hannibal, most of those times in the Mississippi River, but a few times in Bear Creek, too. I would be carried home half drowned, but my mother wasn't overly concerned about it. She said, "People born to hang are safe in the water." Hannibal was a good place to grow up. It certainly was an interesting place anyway, with many fascinating characters. Most of the events in my books, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer and The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, actually did happen in and around Hannibal, and the characters in those books of mine were people I knew, people I grew up with. Of course, I changed their names. Laura Hawkins became Becky Thatcher. Will Bowen and a couple of other boys became Tom Sawyer. Tom Blankenship became Huckleberry Finn. In those books, the town itself became St. Petersburg. heaven. But eventually I felt the need to light out on my own. I was ambitious and adventurous, and I didn't seem to be getting anywhere working as a printer's devil or a apprentice printer in newspaper offices around Hannibal and other places east of there. So I decided to go to the Amazon and become a coca magnate.